Standing here with Bela Tarr. And Bela, thanks so much for joining us for the last of three conversations that have been really fascinating. And we've been talking about many things. And one topic that's come up discussing the work of Antonio Gades and Ben Rivers is one I think that's applicable to your work. And this has to do with this intermingling of the real and the imaginary. And one thing that is so, I think, important, so powerful in the film, is the continuity of time and space through the camera. In a certain extent, it seems to be a kind of realism. We seem to be real time, real space, and yet that continuity gives way to unknown, unexplainable, almost supernatural forces. And I'm thinking of the crowd marching in the werckmeister harmony, how it seems to get bigger and bigger, how that tension of the time seems to create this sort of menacing force through the use of the camera. I'm thinking about the constant restless movement in the Turin Horse, and how it seems there seem to be these apocalyptic winds that are captured and expanded by this movement of the camera. So I'm wondering if you could talk about this fluid, this restless, this camera, and this continuity of time and space, and how it is that you conceive this. Because to a certain extent it seems to be musical, it also seems to be sculptural in the Turin Horse. So I was wondering if you could talk about the role of the camera in your films.
Oh. This is something. Okay. You know, the camera, on the camera we have a lot of lenses which is called objective. It means you can shoot and show something which is real, which is existing in the reality. Your material is always existing physically. This is something as object, and when you take your camera, you can shoot always just the reality. When you are a writer or film historian, you can write 20 pages about this stuff, but I'm a poor filmmaker who has only just this shitty objective, and I can show you only this fucking stuff. But the question is how you are able to make connection between you and this, and how you can put some emotions, how you can develop something from the people which makes this stuff a little bit more meaningful. But the fact is fact. We have just the reality. Everything is concrete in this filming. That's sure. Don't you think?
And yet there's something beyond that. There are these mysterious forces in the films.
No art. It's a job. Physical job. Of course, you have your own moral when you decide what you want to film it. The main question is what you leave it out from your film.
What you leave out from the film.
Yeah.
Well,
and what you choose as your main.
Well, that leads then to the Turin Horse. I mean, I'm struck by similarities between the two films. In both films, you have the uncanny figure of the immobile animal that seems to disrupt the universe, in a sense, the whale, the horse here in the Turin Horse. I'm wondering if, and yet the Turin Horse is your most pared down, your sparest, your most elemental film. It seems to be a film in which you've stripped away almost everything. I was wondering if you could, if you could speak about this act of stripping away. If this is true, as you say, this is part of your creative process. It seems that you've pushed that to a furthest extreme in the Turin Horse.
No, it's you have to understand once. I did films almost 34 years. And the whole stuff is one process. From the first film till the last, it was a way. And of course, how I became older, I understood more and more about the world. But I have to tell you, I see a lot of differences between the Werckmeister harmonies and the Turin Horse, because this one is a kind of fairy tale. You can get, it's really nice. But the Turin Horse is a little bit more bitter. You know, I was 44 years old when I did this. I was a young man. And when I did the Turin Horse, I became really old during all the shooting.
I have a question. When you say the importance are lived out of the films, but you have the daughter saying in Turin Horse, she's reading in the book that the sanctuaries were desecrated and only with penance God will return. And in fact, you don't film it, you don't film the desecration.
Why I need to film?
No, on the contrary, that's why I'm giving relevance to what you're not filming.
No, when I was talking about what I leave out from the film, you know, it's a practical question. If we have a camera here, you can put here and you can shoot us, or we can shoot them. It's totally different point of view. And this is your decision. Where do you take your camera?
You know, in the film of Antonio Reis, he filmed a village for a long time. And you know the center of the villages in Portugal is the chapels. So he lived the chapel hunt.
I can
Yes, that's why I'm bringing this, because you did the same in your films, because you leave out the religious part. Of course,
I lived out the story. No, do you remember the Turin Horse is talking about 6 days when the God created this shit what we have now. He did it during of 6 days, and he was so satisfied, and he did it a seventh off day. And what we did it an anti-creation. Each day we just keep on, off. And this, I kept the story, okay? It's a story.
just enjoy them. Well, maybe we can take some questions from the audience if they have any questions or comments for Bela Tarr. Questions from our audience? Yeah, we've got a question in the back there.
So should I just shout out? Hi, I just stand up here. So the question would be, do you think, well, there's a saying that goes, I don't know if I'm quoting this right, but something along the lines of every country gets the language that it deserves. And I think there's a variation of it that goes something like every country gets the government that it deserves, which is, you know, kind of an interesting one to contemplate for either a Hungarian or a Portuguese audience.
No, we did not got.
Sorry?
We elected them.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying here.
Okay.
Well, so getting back to the question, like, well, you could then, you know, let's say you could take the next step saying every country gets the cinema that it deserves. And do you feel like in your work there's a connection between the language, Hungarian, which is, you know, I'm partisan to it as well. I happen to be Hungarian as well, who's living here. But it's it's a very particular language. It's very visceral. as some of you might have heard here already, it's very, there's a lot of swearing, which is incredibly strong. Actually, it's impossible to translate into English just how crude and rude it is. That's just some aspects of it, and the way you also mentioned that it's important not just what you film but what you leave out, which also reminds you of sort of Wittgenstein, who says it's the important things are the things that you can't talk about rather than the things you can talk about. So I think there's a bit of a parallel there as well. So in simple terms, would you, if you think, leaving aside if that's possible at all, the kind of like social, political, historical context, do you think that if you would you be the same filmmaker if you were somebody who was speaking English or Chinese or Arabic rather than Hungarian?
Sure. Of course I'm Hungarian. And even if I do not live now in Hungary, I'm still Hungarian. And because, everything from my childhood, and the ground, the language and the landscape and the people and everything, it's with me. And when I was thinking or working or doing something, of course, this is my homeland. But when I was young, I was full of energy, and I was really fed up. I was just 22, and I did my first movie, and I just wanted to do punching you, to tell you fuck. It's a fucked up society, and everything is shit, bad, and the most shitty things, the films, because the films never showing the real life. That's why I did it, my first movie with all my anger and all my social sensibility, and and of course 60mm handheld camera in a very brutal way, in a very aggressive cuts, and it was really, and slowly and afterwards the second movie, I was thinking about what it means, don't do drama, just to start to understand the world, and slowly, the style and the language, the film language, and my relation for this filming, it became different, of course, became more and more deeper, film by film, and I understood, of course, more about my homeland, the people. I started to understand why, what, how they are doing. It takes time. For me, it took time, and it was important for me to love them always, not judging them, and be with them. And when you see all my movies, I'm always on their side. That's sure. And of course, I'm Hungarian. I'm not proud, but I don't shame, okay?
How do you work with writers? So the question of language is also brought up the difference between cinema and writing. How was the relationship with writers? How did you work?